Hi, everyone. I'm Eddie. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the Youth Leadership Director. I'm on Ohlone Chichenyo land in the East Bay in California. And today we're going to spend some time getting to know us and our work as the Sierra Student Coalition and the youth work that we do with the Sierra Club. So we'll spend about 20 to 30 minutes doing that, a little bit of a presentation for y'all, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions from y'all. But first, we do have a multilingual panel here, so I did want to pass it over to our interpreters who can talk about how to activate the Spanish-English interpretation.
Hi everyone, hola a todos. Mi nombre es Cristóbal. My name is Cristóbal. We are part of Colectivo Babilla. Part of el Colectivo Babilla, we're going to be providing simultaneous interpretation for today's meeting. Vamos a proveer interpretación simultánea para la reunión de hoy. So just some quick instructions on how to activate interpretation. You will see on the bottom right of your Zoom screen, interpretation globe icon. En la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla van a ver un símbolo de globo que dice interpretación. Once you select that globe, you can select the language that you are most comfortable listening into the meeting as. Puedes seleccionar entonces el lenguaje con que más cómodo se siente escuchando en la reunión entre inglés y español. Once you select the channel, you will be hearing the simultaneous interpretation into that language of whatever is said at the meeting. Una vez seleccione el canal, va a escuchar la interpretación simultánea de lo que se escuche en la reunión. There is also a third option to mute original audio if you only want to listen to the interpreter's voice. También hay una tercera opción de silenciar el audio original si solo quiere escuchar la voz del intérprete. We ask that folks speak at a moderate pace so that we can interpret everything you're saying. Le pedimos por favor que hablen a un paso moderado para poder interpretarles adecuadamente. And if there is a language switch at any moment, to do it after a brief pause. Y también si hay un cambio de lenguaje en cualquier momento, que por favor lo hagan luego de una breve pausa. That is it. If you have any issues with interpretation, you can message me, Cristobal, or Naira. We will be interpreting today. Si tiene algún problema con la interpretación, nos puede mensajear a mí o a Naira, que vamos a estar en la llamada con el nombre intérprete en el nombre de Zoom. We'll have interpreter in our Zoom name. Thank you very much and have a good day. Interpretation starts now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cristobal and Naira, for being here to interpret for us today. So I'm going to get us started by talking a little bit about the SSC and then handing it over to our awesome panelists who are going to go more in depth. I'll briefly introduce them now, and then y'all can introduce yourself as you speak. But we have a great lineup here of both staff and SSC leaders and fellows. So we have Taliba, our network manager, who you'll hear from after me. And Taliba comes to us bringing a real breadth of experience in grassroots organizing and movement building in the South. We also have Rakaya, who is currently an SSC fellow and a young organizer in North Carolina. We have Chris Novaton, our trainings manager, and Chris also comes to us with a breadth of experience in organizing, from electoral campaigns to grassroots and movement building organizing as well. And then we have Yare, who is one of our SPROG lead trainers this year, and we'll go into detail about what SPROG is, but it's one of our beloved training programs. And then we will close it with Jadiel, who will talk a little bit about some of the things that we don't get to that you might be interested in. But Jadiel is our operations manager at the Sierra Student Coalition. And so first, I'll start by telling you a little bit about who we are. So you can see how we're couched in the Sierra Club right here. That's our staff. And we are in the program department, and specifically the Grassroots Power Building Unit, if that means anything to you, if you are a whiz on the structure of the Sierra Club. But the Sierra Student Coalition has been around for 30 years. And so that's why we're doing this, because that is a huge landmark milestone in our existence as a youth organization within the Sierra Club. And so 30 years ago, we started from a group of young people and students who were working to pass what at the time was the Big Green Initiative, which was kind of a culmination of a lot of environmental demands at the time in the early 90s. The initiative ultimately ultimately didn't pass, but the young people who were kind of politicized by that moment decided to stay together and continue learning and organizing together. So from that, a group of young people met in the woods and did some education around organizing and environmental and climate justice. And since then, the spirit of that training, that was kind of considered the first SPROG, has lived on throughout the SSC, and trainings and leadership development has been such a core part of the work that we do. We truly believe that in order to create a sustained movement for climate and social justice, we need to be bringing new leaders and young leaders into the movement who can learn from our elders and all the wisdom of movements past, but also be a part of bringing, oh, I'll slow down, thank you, be a part of bringing forth the solutions that we need to actually advance climate and social justice. And so on top of leadership development, what is also a core part of our work is anti-racism and anti-oppression work. While we started as predominantly a group that looked like the larger Sierra Club base of predominantly white, upper middle class young people and mostly students who had access to higher education, our journey over the last several years has looked different. And out of a recognition for needing to center the experiences and leadership of BIPOC youth, and also make sure that the white youth who are in our base come with a good analysis of how to do solidarity work and how to be anti-racist. So that is an extremely important part of our work. Um, and so in our 30th year, we've been strategizing on how to do more and how to level up. So we've done leadership development through trainings, as always, a core part of our work, as I mentioned, but we're also building up a network of young people around the country and Puerto Rico who can lead this work with us and coming up with ways that we want to engage and grow our network to have it exist for the long haul and to be able to become a force even stronger than we already are in the climate movement. And so I will pass it over to our network manager, Taliba. And Taliba, if you could talk more about our model for leadership development and what's in the works for network engagement in the upcoming year.
Okay, awesome. So, peace, everyone. I am Taliba Obuya. I am the network manager for the SSC, and I'm really excited to be in conversation with you all today. I am currently based in the U.S. South, known as the Decatur, Georgia, a former enslavement state of stolen Africans, mainly from the West Coast, and then also on occupied territory of the Muskogee Creek Nation people. And so, I name that as both where we stand on land today, but then also that definitely informs the way I approach this work. And so it's with much gratitude to be able to support young people. And it's really amazing that we can say 30 years later that this institution is still being built, young people are still being centered. And so that thus influences our model for leadership development. And ultimately, our work creates pathways for young people of different knowledges, experiences, and backgrounds to come together and build and create the world that they want to see as it relates to climate justice, building on how our programs are grounded in with a social justice lens and an anti-oppressionist theory approach. We do trainings and programs like SPROG, SP, ROG, which stands for Summer Programming, and Climate Justice Academy. We get them to take actions, and essentially where these entry points that young people may come into the SSC, we then create these pathways where they can continue their leadership development, where they continue building out their analysis. Like I said, climate justice might bring them to the conversation, but we want to make sure that their analysis is full. With social justice, with an anti-oppressionist theory. And so as the network manager and as a part of the team, we are hoping to build a network, or we're continuing to build this network where young people can be centered, where young people can lead, and where they can also inform the movements that they are a part of. These pathways can look like moving from a participant to a trainer to then leading of campaigns or moving from one program, which is Climate Justice Academy. It's a cohort that starts, has been both in spring and fall, has looked different from year to year, and this kicked off in 2017. Or they can then go on to another program like SPROG, which is in the summertime. And so wherever they are on their journeys to developing their actions to become a climate justice youth fighter, defender of the world we want to see, we want to give them those resources, whether it's trainings, whether it's coachings, whether it's opportunities just to take actions for them to do that. And not only through our programs and our trainings, we also are building out the network that they can continue that local impact, whether it's forming an SSC squad chapter, which means that they are attacking issues in their communities and they're connected to the SSC, still getting their skill trainings, getting their organizing tools, getting to create the communities they want to see, or they are advancing a campaign of the SSC, which you'll hear more about later. But then they can then say, hey, our community reflects this. How can we then go and put our energy to that as well? And so as we continue to engage our 30th anniversary, this commitment to young people in their power, we are steadily through our network building up these pathways where their leadership can be developed, and not only us giving to them, but where we're creating a youth-centered space that can also be youth-led. And so I didn't inherently tie myself at the start, but I'm assuming I may have went over a little bit. Great, so I'm kicking it back to you, Eddie.
Thank you so much, Taliba, and you actually were great on time. But that's wonderful to hear about all of the work and the pathways that we're building that youth can take to really develop their leadership in our network. And Jadiel, you can stop the slides as we really want to create time for you to see more of our faces. And so I wanted to pass it to Rakaya. And Rakaya, like I said, is one of our fellows and rad activists in North Carolina, and they have been involved in various leadership roles in the SSC. And Rakaya helped coordinate our Climate Justice Academy this year and did such an awesome job. And so Rakaya, could you talk a little bit about your leadership pathway through the SSC and then how you came about to actually helping people develop their own pathway through the SSC this year and last year?
Hey y'all, can y'all hear me on my phone? Is this good? Okay, great. Hey y'all, my name is Rakaya Phillips. I use they, them pronouns. Like Eddie said, I am based in the South, in North Carolina, occupied Occaneechi lands and of the Mendenhall plantation of enslaved Africans here in North Carolina. So my journey with the SSC began in the summer of 2019 at the Highlander Center, a research for education center at the South Summer Program. Highlander was an amazing place that trained movement giants, and it was extremely pivotal in the roles for marginalized people across the South. So it was so new. It was very impactful, transformative, right? So, and it was new for me in movement spaces. I was my lane in organizing was arts and culture and student organizing. So it was wonderful and transformative to be in a space with young people dedicated to change around climate and social justice. But I do remember distinctly that there was a time during that week where a movement elder that was on staff at the Highlander Center taught us a song that they used to sing. And just hearing the voices of young people and our elders, sing the song again, I knew in that moment that we were going to get free. And so I started crying. I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm emotional. This is too much. And so I knew for a fact in that moment I wanted to continue doing work with the SSC. And so months later, Chris reached out to me and was like, yo, you trying to be a trainer for SPROG? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not feeling it. I was very hesitant because that's, like I said before, that wasn't my lane. And they were just like, yo, you should do it. I want you to do it. And so I'm like, okay, all right. So I was a co-lead trainer with South SPROG of last year. It was our first online SPROG. That's all I got to say. And so I remember just being like, yeah, I don't want to do this. Facilitation is not my thing. I don't feel comfortable in this role. And so through the care and extreme patience of staff and my South Frog team was that my facilitation got better. It got better, but it wasn't all the way there yet, right? And so I think my skills, it was essential for me to shift into program coordinator role for Climate Justice Academy, because through that role, through the transformation, the growth that I've had during the South Frog to this role, I've seen how essential it is for just leading and developing our young people in order to stay in movement, in order to stay in our spaces, in order to make sure that we move to where we want it to go, right? And so Climate Justice Academy, that warm and fuzzy feeling I was talking about earlier at the Highlander Center, I felt that this year as I was looking at our spring cohort fellows Arab Stay to May Day project, which is a project that we organize for young people to organize around the Youth Thrive agenda and how we're going to engage young people around this project. And just seeing the magic that these young people created this spring, oh my gosh, tears. And there we had TikToks, we had poems, we had people defending their thesis on climate justice, and like young people, it was so motivating and inspiring. I know for a fact that the SSC is producing wonderful young people in order to enact change in their community. So it was just seeing that development from me, just being going to the mountains in Tennessee one summer on a whim, right? And seeing the growth of other young people being touched and transformed by this work is magical. And I'm so grateful to be here and witness this transformation and see that, young people are essential to this fight, are essential to this organizing space. And so it's just been, like I'm saying, that warm and fuzzy, I'm getting it all again just thinking about it, because I'm just like, wow, this is beautiful. I don't know, I time myself, I still got 20 more seconds and I can talk, but I'm gonna cut myself off right here. But yeah, I'm so grateful for being in this role, but I'm gonna pass it back to you. Thank you, Eddie, for this question, by the way.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Rakaya. And I still remember when I first started and you wanted to get some facilitation coaching. And I remember our session, I was like, what are you talking about? You don't need this. And then seeing you, how much you've grown since then too, has been such an amazing thing to witness. And then to see you inspire folks through the Climate Justice Academy has been, it's been so cool. And so now I'll pass it over to Chris, our trainings manager. And as I mentioned, trainings have always been a core part of our programming, and they fill a very unique role. We don't train just to train. They are very intentional trainings. And Chris will talk a little bit more about what we have to offer.
Thanks, Eddie. And somebody please time me, because I could also talk. And also just want to give great appreciation for both Rakaya and Jade for being on the call, because you both are amazing. So trainings is essential to the Sierra Student Coalition because it's literally the way people know us in movement. When you talk to other youth movements, talk to other organizations, they know that our specialty is training. And so they spent years sending young people to us so that we could sharpen their political analysis, give them organizing skills, and then send them back to movement to work on what various issues that they decided to work on. And most of our young people work on intersectional issues. So they work both on climate issues and also reproductive justice issues and things of that nature, or climate justice and disability justice. So our folks come in and learn and unlearn with us in the entire process, which is pretty amazing. And so it's important for us to create sustainable movements that our leaders can continue to emerge and carry on the very critical work. And so that is what we do in our training. So Climate Justice Academy and SPROG are two ways of doing that. And they're two different types of trainings. Climate Justice Alliance is Climate Justice Alliance apologies, Climate Justice Academy, but shout out to Climate Justice Alliance because they're great too. Is between 5 to 10 weeks of virtual training. It's like a class session. And at the end of it, like Rakaya mentioned, from Earth Day to May Day, they did a series of actions and events based on the learnings that they did throughout that entire semester, essentially. And SPROG is just for the summer. And this year, just like last year, because of COVID, we're doing it online, which taught us a lot of lessons about ourselves and about how we sustain and hold impactful transformational relationships in movement virtually. And so creating healthy movements rooted in principles of solidarity and justice, and making sure that we develop a deep anti-oppressive analysis to truly create transformational rather than transactional movements, but also relationships, because relationship building is extremely important, especially if you're from the South. That's how we move, right? And so that's some of the things that we do at the SSC. And this year's our 30th anniversary. We're having SPROG virtually online, and we're having a scaled down version of SPROG because we had to rethink about how can we be very impactful this year in a way that was different from last year. Last year, we attempted to do a full-scale SPROG program, and it was too much. The capacity for ourselves and our young people, we realized we had multiple, and that's why Rakaya is taking some deep breaths. We have multiple conversations about what's that impactful? How can we make this year better? So we decided to scale down a bit before we relaunch next year to potentially doing in-persons, which I'm really excited about. And traditionally we do SPROG in 4 different areas. Puerto Rico has been going strong since 2006. And they have a very strong SSC base there. Jade is one of the best from the island. And then we have one in the Southeast, we have one in the Midwest, and we have one in the, usually in the West Coast between California, Nevada, and New Mexico. So yeah, so that's a little bit about our program. Something that I also want to mention is that a lot of young people come through our program and then either come back to work at the Sierra Club or work in movement outside of volunteering their time. So an example of that is Whitney Pearson. If you all have met her, she is the director of Office of Chapter Support. She was a SPROG participant and then became a SPROG trainer and director, and now is the director of Office of Chapter Support, leading really impactful work. Ernalise is a SPROG alumni from Puerto Rico, who is now the environmental justice organizer at the Sierra Club. We have from the Midwest, Sophia, who we all love so much. Sophia is one of our favorites. And Sophia works at 350, trying to stop the pipeline, Line 3 pipeline in the Midwest. And then we have Jessie, who's also from the Midwest, who, when Jessie started with us, they were a part of the Cori Bush campaign at the very beginning. And one of their purposes was to come and learn more skills so that they could be better prepared to work for Cori Bush on the long road. And Jessie's also one of the most impactful anti-racist white people we have as youth. We have a lot of amazing white anti-racist young people, a lot of folks of color. And Jessie was able to sharpen so much of their skill that Cori Bush decided to keep them long-term, and is now still working for Cori Bush, which is really exciting. And so our programs don't only provide political analysis and a deeper anti-oppressive lens, but we also support our people to go into movement, whether it's a volunteer position or professionally. And so, and our diversity has also shifted as well. Eddie mentioned earlier that we were predominantly white in the beginning and middle class, and now we're about 70% folks of color, so Black, Indigenous people of color, and 30% of the remaining 30% are white anti-racist young people. And I feel confident in saying that because our white anti-racist students have done the work and have been working in solidarity with us for quite some time. And so that's pretty exciting. And we also have Spanish interpretation and translation, because we knew in order for us to continue our deep relationship with Puerto Rico, we needed to provide resources to them for them to feel comfortable to do work with us. And it was no longer English only. Everything needed to be translated in Spanish for them. We needed to have interpreters for them. It was really a disservice we had been doing for years. And we were finally able to set aside some money and say, no, we're doing it this year, moving forward. And so that's been really exciting. I'm going to be here the whole hour to answer. You could ask me all the questions you want at our 30-minute mark. I don't know if there's any other questions you want to ask me, Eddie. I think I hit all the spots that I wanted to hit. So let me know if I missed anything.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris, for letting our attendees know a little bit about the trainings we have to offer and specifically about SPROG. I think you covered it all. And so I want to pass it now to Yare. And as Chris just mentioned, the work that we do around the summer program, and Yare is one of our lead trainers in the Puerto Rico program. And so I would love to hear from you, not only about your journey as a SPROG participant and eventually a lead trainer, but how has that impacted the organizing and the work you do in Puerto Rico?
Hola, hola a todos. ¿Me escuchan bien? Yes. Ok. Bueno, pues como Eddie mencionó, mi nombre es Yare. Yo uso pronombre ella, they, them en inglés. Soy de Puerto Rico, del sur de Puerto Rico, de Ponce, pero vivo en Mayagüez, en el oeste. Puerto Rico, Boriquén, como le llamaban los taínos, antes de que llegara toda la colonización acá al Caribe. Y pues sí, yo actualmente soy co-líder del programa de SPROG, como Chris estaba mencionando, y mi ruta con el programa de SPROG comienza en el 2019, cuando participé como tal de SPROG en Jayuya. Yo creo que el último SPROG que se dio en persona antes de que llegara la pandemia, así que tuve la suerte de poder estar en persona y sentir las conexiones presenciales antes de que tuviéramos que adaptarnos a la manera virtual. Entonces, una vez yo participo en SPROG y para mí fue un programa bien impactante, específicamente por la manera en que se trabajaba el currículo. Como Chris estaba mencionando, el SPROG tiene un currículo antirracista, tiene un currículo de colonial también, y en el caso de Puerto Rico, para mí fue bien impactante la manera en que se entrelazaban los talleres, que no solamente se hablaba de, por ejemplo, antirracismo de una manera separada a lo que es la justicia climática, a lo que son las identidades, a lo que son las narrativas, sino la manera en que el programa y las personas que estaban también, ¿no?, llevando el programa y dirigiendo el programa, lograban entrelazar todos estos temas y de ahí yo entendí, espérate, hay algo que es bien importante, es la interseccionalidad y cómo entonces trabajar por la justicia climática, trabajar por un buen vivir, trabajar por crear otras maneras de vivir desde la interseccionalidad, desde la compasión, desde la honestidad, y desde crear esas relaciones intencionadas que estaba mencionando Rakai ahorita y que mencionó también Chris y Taliba. Entonces, pues eso fue de las cosas que a mí más me impactaron de cuando fui a SPROG, además de que tuve la oportunidad de conectar con un montón de gente que también estaba accionando en sus comunidades y que le apostaban a la justicia climática con todos estos otros lentes. Entonces, pues vernos en ese espacio presencial y poder conectar y poder trabajar y poder imaginar otras maneras de vivir, fue como mencionaba Raquel ahorita, fue hermoso. Y también es hermoso ver que luego de 2 años yo todavía tengo relaciones intencionadas y relaciones importantes con estas personas con las que fui participante. Entonces de ahí, en el año pasado, en el 2020, Chris y Ernalis y Yadiel estaban también pidiendo y llamándome para que solicitara como trainer a SPROG. Y me tiré porque yo vi también la manera en que se daban las dinámicas y la manera en que se abordaban las conversaciones incómodas entre el equipo y yo dije que yo quería ser parte de eso y que quería ser parte de este activismo por el ambiente, que no solamente es un activismo enajenado de lo que pasa de manera social, de lo que pasa en términos de la raza, en términos del género, en términos de la inclusión. Así que pues desde ahí entonces en el 2020 empiezo a ser parte de Sprock ya como trainer y como co-líder. Y eso pues también me llevó a desarrollar destrezas de liderazgo, pero más bien de cómo trabajar en equipo de manera tal que pudiéramos tener relaciones de trabajo que fueran saludables, relaciones de trabajo que partieran desde el cuidado colectivo, desde si nosotros estamos hablando de crear espacios de facilitación antirracista, decoloniales, antiopresivos, pues cómo nosotros como equipo practicamos esas cosas y ponemos nuestros privilegios en la mesa y los trabajamos y de ahí entonces construimos. Así que un poco, pues para que tengan un poco el panorama de cómo se trabaja en el equipo, pues sí, se trabaja desde sabiendo de que tenemos muchas cosas por aprender y muchas cosas por desaprender también. Entonces, ver que del equipo también había parte de participantes que fueron participantes cuando yo fui participante y que podemos trabajar en nuestros proyectos y también entonces seguir aplicando esos currículos fue hermoso también. Ver cómo, por ejemplo, compañeros tienen proyectos de agroecología, tienen proyectos de economía circular, tienen proyectos de arte, tienen proyectos de cine, que es como poner en práctica todo lo que aprendimos en SPRO, que eso ha sido hermoso también verlo, y más en un contexto en Puerto Rico en donde tenemos que accionar porque poco a poco nos están quitando la isla, poco a poco los problemas coloniales en la isla están peores, así que cómo trabajamos de manera tal que podamos juntarnos y podamos tener esta educación política y esta educación justa también entre nosotros. No sé cuánto tiempo me queda porque no me cogí el tiempo, si me dicen. Ok, pues nada, para ir cerrando en términos de lo que trabajamos un poco para el contexto de lo que se trabaja en Puerto Rico, el año pasado que fue virtual, trabajamos con un currículo que era enfocado en las transiciones justas y en el buen vivir, que es un concepto de Latinoamérica. Entonces desde ahí construimos ese currículo y entonces este año lo que estamos mirando es cómo trabajar las acciones ante la crisis climática en el contexto de Puerto Rico. Y entonces de ahí, pues ir montando este currículo, este equipo de trabajo y este espacio para los participantes en donde cuando acabe el programa podamos decir, ok, estos son proyectos que tenemos en común, estos son proyectos que van a seguir corriendo independientemente SPROC ya haya terminado. Así que son dinámicas que se dan. Si quieren saber información o ver proyectos de personas que ya fuimos participantes, personas que ya fuimos trainers el año pasado y los pasados años, les invito a que vean Vuelta Semilla, por ejemplo, están en Facebook e Instagram. Les invito a que vean el Bicicaño también, que son personas del Caño Martín Peña acá en San Juan, que también puedan ver Chimenea de Muerte, que es un documental que va en contra de la carbonera, la planta que genera energía a base de carbón en Puerto Rico. Y nada, son algunos proyectos que están por ahí, así que si quieren saber más información, nos dejan saber y les pasamos todos esos enlaces. Gracias.
Thank you so much, Yare. It is truly great to hear you speak about the work. I learn so much more every time I hear you speak, and an honor to be working with you and with other folks on the island who are very deeply involved in the organizing there, who can really take trainings to the next level because of that, and who can really bring young people into the movement. So it's always a pleasure to hear you and be working alongside of you. And now I'll pass it. Well, first I wanted to say that I really wanted to allow space for us to tell the story of our work, for you to hear from Rakaya and Yare, which is why we did it this way. And we have so much more going on that we just touched on briefly, but thought that for you to hear stories and how we fit into the movement was more important. And so I do want to pass it to Jadiel, who will briefly just touch on some of the other things that we have going on and show you some how you can actually read about those things in more depth since we didn't cover them today. So Jadiel, you can take it away.
Sure. So I'm gonna share my screen really quick here so you can, for folks that are like visual. So like Eddie said, my name is Jadiel. I use he, him pronouns. and I am originally from Puerto Rico. Was born and raised in the island. I've been in the United States diaspora since 2008, and I am currently the SSC operations manager. So I do everything around organizing the events and admin work, and support program safety, and many other things. And also, I started in the SSC as a volunteer in 2008. I went through this program in Puerto Rico right after I graduated. And Adriana Gonzalez and Cristal, which are both started as volunteers, and they are both employees of the Sierra Club right now, were the directors of that program. And I remember that they took me under their wing. And at the moment I was like, yeah, I am not a leader. And they were like, yes, you are. Like they could see it. And they took me under their wing, and like in the span of a year, many other people influenced and were part of me being involved and engaged in the Sierra Student Coalition for many years as a volunteer. And in 2018, I had the opportunity to join as a staff and kind of like give back and step back and be on the background, helping with the logistical parts of it to support young people. I wanted to also share a little bit of like looking ahead, like what is ahead of our work and what are we thinking, and a few things when it comes to trainings. We just finished and wrap up the Climate Justice Academy that Taliba led, and over 85 young folks graduated from that program and are like looking to stay engaged with the SSC or in movement. Also, Chris mentioned the virtual summer programs that are coming. And in the fall, we will have learning series, Being Young at a Crime, to explore and dive into the intersections of Black and Brown communities and climate justice in the United States and Puerto Rico. When it comes to the network and all the work that we're doing around that, we continue working with Youth Thrive, which is the platform, part of the Green New Deal network with the Thrive agenda. And we are like leading the work of like, what are the voices of young people in this space look like for this agenda? Like what is the future that we aspire to be, and organizing around that, based on the interests or the issues that vary from community from community to community. We're also going to continue working on our 30th anniversary. This year is our 30th anniversary. We're celebrating 30 years of like building youth leadership in the United States and 15 years in Puerto Rico. We have a series of events and highlighting the stories of like alumni and learning where they at right now. Some of them are in the Sierra Club. Some of them went out to the world and they're like professors, and they're sharing their story on how they being part of the Sierra Student Coalition and in the last 30 years at some point help them to get where they at right now, and share that story, which we think is really important. And last but not least, wonder if Eddie or someone can share the link, but we also have our annual report is a part of our website, but you can see some of the stories that you heard here and other folks and the work that we did on 2020, and learn more about like, these accomplishments and how we move around that, in the middle of the pandemic and emerging and in that process. And if you want to learn more about the Sierra Student Coalition as well, and you want to stay up to date or engage younger folks that you have, you can follow us on social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and it's the same handle at Sierra Student. And we're constantly posting and keeping our base informed and sharing other movement stories and content that is important and from our allies and partners that the Sierra Club and the Sierra Student Coalition work with.
Eddie, before you go, I just want to name, Jadiel and I both came from Sprague, and I always forget to mention it because I'm so excited to talk about everybody else. But I want to name that being in relationship with Jadiel has also grown me as a person. And so when Jadiel went to go work for the Sierra Student Coalition, I had no idea until like a year after he started. And then I was like, I'm gonna apply for the trainings position so I could run Sprague like I always wanted to. And Jadiel was like, go for it. And now like we went through Sprague at similar times and continued our friendship. And now we both work here. And so, and people are really excited about us working here too. Like the alumni that we're friends with, they're like, this is amazing. So I just wanted to like also bring that part that I like don't mention because I like to brag about everybody else. But yeah, it's been an incredible journey with Jadiel and through our Sprague. So
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jadiel and Chris. It's always wonderful to just hear the relationships that have been built and to see people working together after having attended a Sprague. I think maybe for y'all, like 8 to 10 years ago. So cool. So that wraps up our presentation for today. And so we have some time, about 20 minutes for Q&A, maybe a little bit less so we can do a little bit of a closeout. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box and we can answer them. And we do have one in here. And let's see, I'll read it out loud. Okay, yeah, I think this is relevant. So this person is a member of the state leadership for South Carolina chapter and began a program at Coastal Carolina University and is wondering about recruitment resources for the Sierra Student Coalition. Do they exist for the fall? I think this is relevant for any folks who might be interested in, this sounds like a question of like starting a chapter or a group and how to recruit. I think Taliba had to hop off, so I can answer this one, and if anyone else wants to chime in. But as you heard, our work is super intentional. And so we are actually not actively recruiting or building up chapters just yet, but that is in the works for building out guidance for how to do that. And so we're keeping tabs. I think this person, Michael Lowry, you have emailed our SSE email before. We're keeping tabs on all those people who have been interested, and we'll reach out to you as those resources are built out. But right now, because we want that to be intentional, we want there to be guidelines and actual support and resources set up for chapters to come about and start recruiting. We are pausing on that until we do more planning. But we're looking at the fall, and we'll keep you all updated if you've expressed interest here or through our SSE email.
yeah, and something else to mention is Marcarius, who's at the South Carolina chapter, also went through Sprague, was a trainer actually at Sprague. And so he'll probably have some great resources from when he was a trainer with us too. So check him out. You probably know him since you're a part of the state chapter already. He's great, so yeah.
Awesome. And we have another question, a couple questions that looks like they came in advance that Dallas is helpfully putting into the chat. So one of them is, how does Will Youth Leadership Development Project connect with other Sierra Club youth focused programs, inspiring connections outdoors? Anyone want to take that? I'm happy to, but also happy to open the floor to other panelists.
I really wonder which Mark that is. If it's the Mark I think it is, hello, Mark. But what I will say is that that's actually something that we're all figuring out. Inspiring Connections Outdoors, the Sierra Student Coalition. Oh my God, why can't I think of the name of the LA campaign happening around youth? My Gen, yeah. So we've actually all have been in conversation trying to figure out how to better connect with each other, because we notice that there is a gap that we each work with youth, but we don't work together in coalition with each other. And so some of the things that we have been trying to do is just be in more communication with each other, is one thing that we've been trying to do. Another thing is that I think if you want to do an intentional connection with us, email us and we could see what we can offer together to do as a group. We also are trying to like launch our own SSC like outings, like, well, not like our own, but we're trying to get our folks to do more outings too, so they could get more involved with chapters and with Inspiring Connections Outdoors. That's something that's been on Jadiel's radar for a long time and trying to find ways to get into it. So I would say reach out to us and let's set up a call so we could figure that out, because we'll be more than happy to do it. Because Inspiring Connection Outdoors brings in a lot of people, particularly youth in certain areas, especially in LA. And so we'll just be excited to see like what we could build together.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Another question coming through. What is the best way to build understanding with others about the importance of climate action and climate justice, in your opinion? Um, and I mean, I think any of us could really answer this, so I'll open it up to y'all and see.
I would love for Rakaya or Jade to answer that. It don't need to come from us. It should come from them.
Jade, what's going on? No, it's cool. It's cool. I think the best way to build understanding about the importance of climate action and climate justice is to connect it to another issue. I feel like that was the for me, that was the aha, eureka moment. I was like, oh, I see how climate is impacting my family, who is an immigrant, because of like in the Caribbean, just thinking about how that deeply impacted my analysis for engaging with the earth, you know? And so connecting climate action to social justice action was extremely pivotal for me to continue my analysis. But I also feel like that was a real basic answer. So if anyone else has some wonderful, poignant insight, please feel free.
Yo puedo aportar también a eso que menciona Rakaya, y que sí, la conexión es esencial, y además de eso, ver entonces cómo vamos conectando las historias, porque se trata de narrativas. Entonces hay distintas narrativas, las narrativas de nosotros como individuos, las narrativas de The Story of Us también como colectivo, y las narrativas entonces de qué va a pasar en el futuro. Entonces cómo vamos conectando, como menciona Rakaya, estos issues y las narrativas también es bien importante para el trabajo que se vaya a seguir haciendo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rakaya and Yare. Always wonderful to hear from you. We have another question in here. I won't read the whole thing, but the question is, in your opinions, what are some things mental health providers should be asking youth about in terms of their experience with climate change due to the climate grief and anxiety that comes with it?
This is Chris. I have a few things to say that are important that I think folks should ask or should maintain. So a few things to name is, one, you should always ask the person you are supporting, what do they prefer, what is their chosen name, and what are their pronouns? And you should absolutely respect their pronouns and their chosen name at all times. A lot of folks come in and think about climate as a single issue, and Audre Lorde has taught us that there is no single issue. All issues are connected. So respecting their name and their pronouns is super important. Also, when it comes to climate, allow them to speak about what they feel is important around climate, but more importantly, if you want to be able to better support and understand, I would say ask Black and Brown folks in your communities if you have a relationship with them. If you're not a Black or Brown person and you're a white person, then talk to anti-racist white people first to be able to make that connection, because we don't want it to be transactional. It should be transformational, and it should be beneficial on both ends. And don't ever assume that you know all the answers on how to save climate issues in somebody's community. Don't ever make that assumption. And I think something else that's important to name, like Rakaya had mentioned, is naming how things are connected. So an example of that is in the reproductive justice movement, we talk a lot about abortion access and access to clinics. And what folks don't usually know is that the clinics are so far away from each other because there's super funds in between those places. So there's environmental hazards that are causing issues for people to get common access to clinics, right? Because of the distance they have to be away. Prisons are built on super funds, and people do not see the connection to incarcerated people and climate change. And so thinking about not just climate as climate grief, but grief in movement, grief in Can you hear me now? Oh, thank God. What's the last thing some people heard? Somebody tell me.
You were saying to not just think about grief in movement.
Oh, yeah. No, I was talking about don't think about grief as just, oh, no worries, as just a climate issue, because it's majority of the time connected to multiple issues. And so being able to peel an onion as far back as you can by asking those questions is important. But I would say always recognize who the person is, always recognize their pronouns, understand their racial dynamics and how they grew up. Don't make assumptions on it. A lot of folks make assumptions on how Black people live their life and they have no idea because they're not us. And so those are important things to think about. A lot of folks, and I'm not saying anybody on this call, but I'm saying there have been conversations we've had with folks who think Black and brown people and Indigenous folks don't care about the environment. And that's not true at all. And so thinking about those things are really important, I think. I could go on and on about this because I also am a part of Movement for Black Lives and I'm building out a Black climate agenda. And we talk a lot to therapists of folks of color to also support them around climate grief. So there's many ways you could go. Just keep doing research and question everything at the same time. I hope that was kind of helpful.
Yes, it was. Thank you so much, Chris. And so apologies for that little technical difficulty, but glad we got it solved. We have room for a couple more questions. And let's see, manage to support. Okay, I see two in here that are great closing ones. So we'll get to those. And then there was one that came in advance that I did want to address. Don't have all the answers to, but I think it's important to uplift. But one, it was about what young people can do around the California wildfire season and preventing some of those challenges. I honestly don't have all the answers to that, but I do want to uplift that one of the best ways you can do that is by supporting your local Indigenous organizing. Indigenous and Native people have been stewarding the land through controlled wildfire burns, and it is in part because of climate change and because we've got rid of those practices and taken land away from Indigenous people that these wildfires happen. And so I would say to find out what some of your local Native and Indigenous activists are doing. Many of them have set up like land trusts and ways that you can give to them so that they can take back the land and steward it in the ways that they always have been and really care for the land. In the East Bay area, there's one called the Sogoriate Land Trust that you can give to, and it's a land project that is Indigenous led. So that would be my answer to that is, and regardless of whether or not the Indigenous folks you want to support are doing wildfire work, the more that we can build power and bring land back to being stewarded by Indigenous folks, the more they actually have the solutions to these issues. And then we'll close with these two questions. So let's see. Maybe let's start with Allison Chin's about what are some meaningful ways. Actually, no, actually Anita's, if the sky's the limit, what would we like to see for the future of the SSC? I'd love to hear your aspirations. And then we'll end with the how you can support us question, because that's a great closer.
I think we should answer them together just in case we run out of time.
Yeah. Anyone want to take it first?
Time check, we have 5 minutes, so whoever goes first, be mindful of time so other people could speak. Obviously, I'm a facilitator and I'm a great one, everybody, if you didn't know that already.
Thank you. I want to see young people. I want to see a cohort of young people being like, yeah, SSE is my political home. That's what I want to see. And I don't. Were we answering both questions, or are we just this one? I'm gonna be quiet. Never mind. Thank you, Chris.
I can go next, since I've been in the SSC as a volunteer and see it in like many iterations. And the one thing that I see that it keeps going, like, you know, in the SSC is where I learned how to organize. In the SSC is where I learned how to, like, you know, run campaigns. And the work that I do now is like, I learned it in the SSC. I was one of these like unique people that like to do logistics and all that work and be like in between dealing with all this like fussy, you know, processes that sometimes people don't want to like tackle it. And I really like it. I learned this in the space, and I see many people learning and taking it to another, you know, to other spaces, even if in their movements or working in the SSC to build our network. So I aspire for the Sierra Student Coalition to continue doing that and evolving. The one constant that I see for the SSC is that it's always shift and adapt. And even in 10 years, the generation has changed so much. I see how the SSC has adapted and continuing doing the core work of organizing and building youth leadership, but adapting to the needs that are happening at the moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Chris. You got
okay.
1 minute, and then we'll do the next closeout
Oh,
question.
shit, I'm gonna try. Oh, I'm sorry for cursing. For those who, okay. First of all, Anita and Allison, thank you both for your questions, and also thank you both for your leadership. Allison Chin is one of my mentors, so I deeply love you and always see you. I would say some of my inspiration is going to kind of sound like cliche, but it's to staff up. I want more staff so we have more capacity. Because what I really want is to have an SSC chapter in every state. And I want the SSC chapters to eventually connect with the chapters, especially those who have been on their equity journey and understand what it means to be in partnership with young people. I want SSCers everywhere. I want everybody to know who they are. I want them to continue to be respected, because they are respected, particularly in movement and youth movement, but continuously be respected, particularly by the Sierra Club in ways that sometimes we don't always see. And I think some ways of supporting is some of our young people need mentorship, and we don't always have capacity to do that. So if you feel like you have capacity to mentor a young person, let us know. If you have capacity to have a conversation with us and help us think about new and creative ways to really show up for them, or for you to show up for them, we're open to do that. We're happy to have conversations around what it means to build meaningful conversations with young people. And you always want to start with the why do you want to build that relationship? And once you have an answer that is transformational and not transactional, then come see us. But those are some of the ways in which you could contribute to us, help us, and what I inspire to see our people do. And eventually have somebody at the SSC, an alumni, run the Sierra Club. We're not too far away from it, you know? So we're only a few steps behind, you know? So that would be great to see that one day too, you know, because we're all over the Sierra Club. They just don't know. So that's some of the things that I would like to see.
Thanks, y'all, for answering that. And we could go on and on. We have lots of visions for where we want to be as the SSC. But with 1 minute left, I did want to get to one of the most important ways and meaningful ways you can support us. You heard some of our visions, you heard what we do, you heard from some of our amazing leaders in the SSC that aren't on staff. And this work isn't possible without us being able to grow it and seed the work, and that costs money. And so I really wanted to make the pitch to y'all that if you liked what you heard, if you were inspired what you heard, if you feel like we need to continue building youth leaders in order to build a really winning movement for climate and social justice, and this is the work to give to and to help us also continue to push the Sierra Club in the direction of supporting BIPOC and communities who are really impacted by these issues. So I'll leave it there. And I just wanted to say thank you all so, so much for attending. It's so great to be able to finally create visibility for our work in the broader Sierra Club. And this is just one of many things we're doing this year. We have many events planned throughout the year. We're engaging parts of our base, telling the story of our work throughout the Sierra Club. And this is just one of the ways we're doing so. And so I just appreciate you all so much for having the interest to come learn about our work and to support us.
Thank you, everyone. It was great to be here today. Thank you to our interpreters for being here and supporting interpretation needs.